behalf of MAN Diesel and Turbo and myself that we are honored to be here tonight. We played, I think, a role, maybe not in the beginning of this long project, but at the end here we could see that there was really a potential in the invention which was initiated both by Kappel and Paul Andersen. I think there was also this question about is there any correlation between aircraft industry, I think there was a question here, and also the marine business here. And seen from my own perspective, I would say that I saw that invention already in the aircraft business when I was a glider pilot in the 80s. I think it was in 1985 or 1984. I was participating in a competition, and then I saw one of the gliders had those winglets for the first time. So, and asked the owner of that glider whether I could actually have a try for and see how it operated. And in those days, those winglets they are detachables. You can fly without or with them. So, and there was a remarkable difference in performance, not only in the sense of what we call the LD ratio, which is the performance of a glider, but also the maneuverability is much better with the winglets on. So from that day on, I was actually convinced. And then later in the 90s, when I first met Kappel and we discussed this one here, I was also convinced immediately. I don't think Kappel, I don't know where you're sitting. There. I don't think you had a problem convincing me, at least. I had then internally the problem actually to convince the management at that time that this was the way to go. But then, as you'll see here later in my presentation, we succeeded actually to make first a cooperation agreement, and then finally we took over the whole business of Kappel. But tonight I would actually focus on, first of all, what is in it for us, let me put it that way. And I will also look into how the design procedure is in our company today. It's not like how Paul Andersen was or Kappel was actually shown here before. We have another way of doing we're using the same tools, but we have added a number of tools that you'll see. And this constant strive for improving the efficiency also means that we are not only looking as Kappel propeller as a standalone product. We've seen it work so well together with other, what we call other efficiency improving devices. And there I'll give you some examples, what we have been doing in that respect. And then I think I'll finally round off with some cases, split between new building and retrofit. And especially focusing on what you do when you combine the Kappel with efficiency improving devices. It's amazing how figures you can come to. And you may question those figures, but I think we have done the testing. So, but first, from our side, this is in bullet points how we see it, and the reason we went into it. That was all the convincing work that has been done by Mr. Kappel and by Paul Andersen. So this is another, let's say, another thing that would. That convinced us was actually the efficiency improvement, which depending on the application is in the range from 2 to 5%. And that's, by the way, compared to a well-designed state-of-the-art propeller. It's not a B-series propeller, as you mentioned, Kappel, or it's an old propeller. Of course, there you can get even bigger improvement. And I think I had the opportunity in 2003, the two of us, Kappel, we were sitting together and we formed the first cooperation agreement. Of course, it was not only Kappel and me, there was a lot of lawyers sitting around the table as well. That's how that is. But we finally came to an agreement. And that went running for a number of years until 2012. Then we were again talking, and finally we agreed upon that we should take over all the rights of the Kappel Mr. Carroll himself. I think one thing worthwhile mentioning from our point of view is that until 2010, we were solely focusing on CP propellers. We were not on fixed bed propellers. So I think that was also a way to get into the fixed bed propeller. If we would come with a conventional fixed bed propeller, it would be so hard for us to push through. But with a carbon propeller, that was absolutely at the right time and the right invention and the right product, I'm sure. It has been mentioned here before that the pressure impulses, it was shown also by one of the applications from Carroll, that we would have lower pressure impulses, which can be then translated into even bigger improvement in efficiency. And this is done by, then you go for less tip clearance, bigger propellers, and that would be a secondary effect, you can say. This about carbon propeller can be explained by equation as shown by Paul here before, or you can take some kind of an analogy. And most seems to be familiar with the aircraft, where you have the lift distribution on the wing. And as we also saw now that the winglets are coming, and they, what they are doing is actually they are reducing the lift, the loss of lift on the wing. It's called in aircraft business theory. It's called induced drag, but it's actually not drag. It's a loss of lift, and the winglets and the cable is preventing that loss of this lift. So, and that can be seen also like creating vortices being shed from the propeller tips or the wing tips in this case. And that analogy we use the same way of the basic principle here. The lift distribution will be in a way so that you would have a more lift for the same diameter and blade area ratio. Then comes this question about the geometry. It is we have to communicate our geometry to the manufacturers of our propellers. And I can tell you this is a problem every time you go. We have manufacturers here in Europe, and we have some in Far East. And the first, I can tell you, it takes 2 days to convince them that it's a special geometry. Because they say, okay, why can't we just combine it with a screw and with a rake and everything? Why can't we make the same geometry? But the geometry is completely different. It's not, it can be, as already shown, it cannot be combined with the usual means as with conventional propellers. So, but after 2 days, I'm sitting with a Japanese or a Korean or a Chinese, then finally figure out that's the case. And if you look at the geometry, you see, of course, conventional carbon propeller. The difference is, as we already know now, is in the tip region. Then to the design procedure. What you see here is a flow chart of how we usually do it when we make a design. First of all, we have the blade optimization, which is step number 1. We have a number of software programs that is either taken over. Those LiftP and Trace is some of Paul's program, which Carver also used. Then we made ourselves a Casper program, which is a geometry input file, so we can very fast generate different geometries. Out of that, in principle, you give some input parameter. Out comes actually an optimized lift distribution, an optimized propeller. And next step is then the S-Pro program, which was also shown by Paul, which is boundary element method, which shows potential flow. But the main purpose from our side is that we calculate the pressure distribution, and thereby also calculate where there is a danger of cavitation, and also the extension of cavitation. Next is also the CFD side. We use the Adapco, I'm say Siemens now, CFD range code, we use it mostly for state analysis and open water efficiency here at this stage here. I'll come a little bit back to that. And finally, we have classification society. That's mostly the basic rule for dimensioning and scanning of the propeller. That is done by some, again, a software package we have developed in-house. Finally, there's the final element, the design, where we actually put the hydrodynamic loads and the ice class load on it, as you see in a moment. And this is not a one-way through passage, this one here. There will be a number of iteration loops that's going here, either break off here, or break off here, and then we go through that different stages. And then I can also say that it says release for model testing or production. In most cases, actually for model testing, we will always have, in almost all cases, have a verification test at the very end. That is self-propulsion test, open water test, of course, and cavitation testing also. So. A bit about the SPRO program. We use it for cavitation analysis. It's not built in a cavitation model in this one here yet, but we saw just the first attempt made by one of our employees here, who's working a PhD on a cavitation model for the SPRO model. And that we're going to take into use, of course, as soon as it's been tested. Well, otherwise, we would use it to see is the cavitation too much, too little. If it's too much, then okay, we have to increase the blade aeration, or too little, then it's the opposite, vice versa. And it also gives a good idea about the chord distribution. You can move the chord so in such a sense that you get less cavitation with the same blade aeration. And but the pressure impulse is still calculated using a statistical program. That's a program we had for many years, which is including a number of modifications from our side. CFD, as I said, mostly steady state. We use it for open water and in a design phase here now, and we use it to fine-tune some of the parameters like the diameter. You know, typically we would have a specification that would say a propeller diameter at that dimension. But at this stage here, we have all the information which we do not have at the moment when we probe the propeller. So we actually see whether a bigger or smaller propeller diameter would give an additional improvement. And then we go back to the customer and say, okay, we would propose that you increase the propeller diameter by 100 millimeters, then you can gain X% in efficiency. So that's a part of it. The same goes for the aeration, mostly from a cavitation point of view, and again we of course with a chord distribution. The unsteady analysis. There's two ways we use it. One is we have a simulated weight. This is a method that is actually devised by internally in our company, how to apply a weight field. That's a problem with CFD calculations. So, but we have a method, and then we use that in the design, especially to look at flow details in the tip region, or wherever we find it of interest. We could also have a complete behind the hull, including appendages like rudder, and it could also be some kind of upstream flow devices that are sitting there. And finally, we have an unsteady two-phase cavitation analysis, which is done actually also in a simulated way for determination of the erosion index. That is the best tool I've seen so far in determining erosion. So that gives a clear indication of erosion if that will happen. Final element calculation is the next step, and there we have to consider both the hydrodynamic load and The design of propellers and propeller blades are not from a static point. It's a dynamic dynamic component that is dynamic varying forces. So you have to consider the fatigue. So if you actually look at the stresses you have in the blade, the maximum stresses from a static point of view are only something like 1/10 of the tensile strength. So it's a pure fatigue analysis we make from the hydrodynamic. Same goes for ice loads. Most of our propellers actively have ice class, so we have to also fulfill these requirements, which are set by classification societies, different ice loads depending on the load cases. So in principle, then we are ready for having gone through and satisfied all our conditions for the design. Then we are ready to go to the testing, and after having done a successful testing, then we go into production. Again, here there is a standard, which is this ISO 484, which is governing the whole manufacturing of propellers. However, that is based on conventional propellers. So again, here we have, first of all, we have to come up with our own solution, and that we done by actually issuing what we call an amendment to this ISO norm. And not only that, we also have supplied our manufacturers with a software tool that is where they just input their measured values, and then immediately it will measure up against the ISO norm and our correction to the ISO norm. After working sometimes with a couple propeller, we found that it could be combined with some other efficiency improving devices, actually quite successful. Some years back, we looked into what could actually be of interest here. And you see here, there's some sitting behind the propeller, we call post-roll fins. There will be something like a rudder bolt after the propeller hub. There will be the cow propeller, of course. And then those hubcap fins, we call them. There could in some application also be nozzles. And also the Navy stuff is of interest. We tried it. And so is it with pre-swirl fins as well as and a rudder profiles. As you see here, we practically tried them all. We still need this post-roll fins, but the others we have tried also model testing and full scale as well. If you look in the diagonal here, you see the expected improvement in efficiency by combining the two. So, and I think here, looking especially here at the copper color, that will be the green color will be an indication that it goes actually well with most of them. So, when you do this kind of combining efficiency improving devices, is that you should ask yourself the question: first of all, can they be combined? Secondly, can you then just add, the efficiency improvement that has been given by let's say the inventor or the manufacturer of these improving devices? And a good sound principle, I think, is to tell yourself, don't try to recover loss more than once. So we have seen this picture you see here. It was probably given by a naval architect from a German shipyard once. He said, see here what we tried on the last vessel. Yes, I said, but this is our propeller. Yes, I know. He said, yeah, but you never told us you fitted those efficiency improving devices. So of course, this one is a lesson to be learned. I think that is that you really have to work together with the naval architects and the propeller designers in order to get the full benefit. Let's take a look at the number of new build cases, or just a number of them. And here's, first of all, I'd like to give you the current status as it is as per today. We have now 85 vessels equipped with cargo propellers. Some of them are twin screws, so that the total number of propellers is a bit higher. Interesting enough, I think, is that we would have 65% of them going into the retrofit and only 35 in new sale. So we tried, I think already Carlo already mentioned that, we have tried on quite a number of different kinds of vessels, and the applications are actually both fixed pitch and CP propellers. The first reference I'll mention here is chemical tanker. It's actually a sea carrier for a German ship owner. It was built in China. It just went on sea trial, and we got some very positive feedback also after the sea trial and after it was put into operation with the sailing in fuel. But otherwise, it followed the I think the same path as we've done in many of our projects, is that we come in, we design a cargo propeller, and here it's combined with a rudder bar, and which is then actually integrated into the structure of the rudder together with the manufacturer of rudder. So, the result from the model test, you see here. First of all, I just going to explain the graph here because it's going to appear again on all reference. We have the ship speed here on the horizontal axis. We have the propeller power on the vertical axis on the left side. And of course you would have a reference, which is the blue one here, line, which is the stock propeller having a spade rudder but without bulb. And then we have the red curve, which is a twisted rudder with rudder bulb, and the cargo propeller. Then of course this difference is an indication of the improvement we have. So this also means that can be depicted like the green curve here and the improvement in efficiency or reduction in power, as you mentioned, you can see here. So in this case here, it was at 16.5 knot. We achieved this 6.7% in improvement. Here you see there's a rather flat optimum. That would be at the minimum here, but it would be in the range, let's say, from those 6.7 all the way up to 8%. The same ship owner has another series which is larger. Actually, it's an 85,000 deadweight ton Athene carrier, where the other one was 36,000. The same picture here. We have here an improvement of 6.3% at a slightly higher design ship speed. But this is of course a combination both of the cargo propeller and a rudder bulb and a twisted rudder in this case. Ro-Ro case, which is Ro-Ro ferry built at FST in Flensburg. And here, this is a twin screw vessel. And here the picture is not similar, but the improvement is there. But it looks as if it's more speed dependent here, which is difficult to explain, I would say. But anyway, we know that the shipyard is very happy with this propeller here, and the conventional propeller was actually a propeller they used on one of the previous similar type of vessels. So I think this is really a fair comparison. I was told now that the cargo propeller is now used as the stock propeller, reference stock propeller. Retrofit market, which you saw before, is actually the biggest so far. We have first a couple of container references. One is for the Greek ship owner Danaos. Two ships that were retrofitted with fixed pick propeller of carbon, and so the basis is here that we do what we call an engine power limitation case, which means that we do the reduction in power along the propeller curve. I'll just show that in a graph a bit later. It's a 12K98 engine, and they had original a rating of 68 megawatt at 104 RPM. That was then lowered to 44 megawatt at approximately 90 RPM. And of course, this gives, of course, improvement or the room for improvement. It makes possible, of course. First of all, you can look at what's actually the optimum number of blades, what's the optimum number of, what's the optimum propeller diameter. And in this case, we went from a 6-bladed 8.8 meter to a 5-bladed 8.9 meter. And on the request of the ship owner, he also wanted to include these propeller bus caps. As you can see there, this one sitting here. So, this is how this de-rating is actually done. The originally specified MCR is up here at the intersection here. What we do is that we lower the power along this line until we find a power that will fulfill the requirement for the speed of the vessel. And I think the big benefit here of this is that you don't have to, your emission certificate will still be valid. You don't have to go out and do new emission tests to fulfill the required IMO requirements. Another thing we of course interested in when it's fixed propeller, this is what we call the light warning, that we have a certain light warning up here, and we also have that here at the new design point. There used to be a fight between engine builders and propeller designers, how much that should be. Propeller designers would prefer to have a low light warning margin because that means a higher propeller efficiency, while the engine builders, they would like to have a big light warning. So I think the latest recommendation now from our company is that it should be between 4% and 7%. But here we are now with this one. Okay, again we take the same graph, take a look, the same type of graph. And here we have a very flat optimum, it's more or less, in this case here, 5.7% in the whole speed range. Radon also confirmed by the seaborne by his reduction in speed. Another container vessel. Should be familiar to some of this, someone in the audience here tonight. And again, the same. It's a power limitation case along the propeller curve. We have a 10K80 engine, which is then derated from 45 to 26 megawatt, and of course the same with the propeller rate. It had a 6-bladed 8.3 meter conventional propeller. Now it's a 4-bladed. We selected a 4-bladed 8.6 meter. Again, here we have the hubcap fin. I have to mention, let's take a look at the curve here. Here you see quite a significant improvement again, in the range from 6 to 8%. I know those tests here, they were actually made without that hubcap fin. So this is purely as a result of going from a conventional propeller to that hubcap fin. Of course, for another design point also. That's also important. So those were fixed big propellers. The next is the CP propeller. It's actually two series of vessel. The first one is a 38,000 pedestrian from chemical tanker for the, as you can see here, for the Norwegian seaborne Odfjell. They had 8 in this first series, and they asked us to investigate what could be the possibilities for giving a more efficient operation. And you see here, it's again an MAN engine, it's our CP propeller, and they actually lowered the demand for power quite significantly. We went from 14 megawatt down to 6. So, what is really the point is that those engines, they drive on the front end through a gearbox, what you call a shaft generator. So that means the way they operate with a constant, what is called synchronous speed of 117 RPM all the time, and all the maneuvering is simply done by changing the pitch. This is also okay as long as you're close to the design point of the propeller, but if you do slow steaming where you just constantly reduce the pitch, then the propeller efficiency will drop off. So it's actually essential if you really want to have improvement that you also look at changing that synchronous speed. So a part of the investigation first, and also the change that was done to the total propulsion system here was actually to change the gear ratio here. So that went down to 90. And again, as a result of that, the optimum diameter is actually again going up from 6.1 to 6.3 meters. We went, of course, again from a car propeller to the convention to a car propeller, and we made one of our waterfall optimized waterfall. And those are the figures you get out of this. Yes. And that is for the first series. Then there was another series which was slightly bigger. I can't remember how big they were. I think they were up around 40. Exactly the same figures. And what's most interesting is that you can actually go on the net and have the ship owner also evaluate those figures. And in full scale, he claims he has more than 20% improvement in fuel. So, nicely satisfied customers, I would say. Yes, the last case I brought here was an oil tanker, which again, this is a rather old design, but it still again shows the potential, what can actually be achieved. Here again, this was one vessel that was designed for 16 knots. So you see, this was they did not use that at all. Instead, they said to us, we have an optimization speed that is now 12.5 knots, and we also have only a requirement to have a top speed of 14 knots. What we always do when we have this kind of project is to look into how big can the propeller diameter actually be. The bigger, the better. The more efficient if you can get the right revs on the propeller. So again here, we could actually substantially increase the propeller diameter from 8.2 to 9. So. What we did in this case here was that first we were asked to make a feasibility study by the ship owner and find out what the potential was. So we went through and said that, okay, we'll take not only a case looking at how much can actually the efficiency be improved, but also look at the whole propulsion train. That is the mechanical side, that's vibration side, and everything. So out of this came that we suggested to de-weight the engine from 18 megawatt down to 10. We went from 91 to 68 RPM. We went from a 4-bed 8.3 meter to a 9 meter fixed pitch carbon propeller. So, but during our analysis, we soon found out that there was actually a problem with the Forsmark vibration. This is something very, very essential when you have two-stroke driver-driven propellers. So you have high stresses in some kind of the shaft. So you have to be very careful. So what we said or told the ship owner is that to overcome this problem here, we need to change the intermediate shaft. So you have to include the cost of a new intermediate shaft in order to get this done. But so that was a part of the investigation, and the decision by the ship owner was that I'll take that cost as well. So, and then we have a cooperation with Baker Marine, so systems in Hamburg, and on a number of topics. One is the Navy stuff, and this project here shows again that the capital propeller worked well together with the Navy stuff. So those are the figures our feasibility study showed, that we could gain 17.5% at the optimization speed of 12.5 knots, and at the maximum top speed 14 knots, there will still be 16% improvement. It's very easy to claim figures. It's more difficult to prove them, So again, it comes with a typical way of doing that. Nobody really believes in what's going to happen when the chip is being put into operation. The way in this business is to prove it by volume testing. This is how it works. So, okay, we take it step by step. Here we have first the converter. I have to mention those ships were old ships. So there was no model available. There was no the existing conventional propeller available. There was no quadruple propeller available. So we had to start with building a new model of the hull, a new model of the existing propeller, and then also a model of the car propeller. So, and then we did that for a number of drafts. I've only taken here the design draft. The first step is to change the car propeller with the conventional. And here you see again the same type of curve. We are between, let's say, 5.5 and 6.5. And then our good colleagues from Baker went in, and they have a special procedure, first of all to design it, but secondly also to how to test it and adjust the fins inside. And that is the next step. We have the carpet propeller here, we have the carpet and the Navy stock here, so that would give an improvement here in the order of that step of 7%. The estimation from Baker themselves was actually 3.3%, which is here. I'll come back to this a bit later here, because there are different scalings. Paul already mentioned a bit about scaling of the car propeller with the strip pressure. But the IDTC has allowed acting navies to use a special scaling when it comes to the Navy stocks. So this would always give them some benefit in this. We have tried ourselves also in the last IDC conference that was here in Copenhagen, I think in 2016. We made a paper and tried to convince the IDC, but so far we have been unsuccessful. That may come. But how we sum up this one here is actually that we saw here, now we are looking at the 12.5 knot. You have saving from the cap of 5.4%, Navy stock 3.3%, and then we call the synergies between the cap and the Navy stock, because who's going to benefit from this improvement in scaling? Is that the cap propeller or is that the Navy stock? That is a constant argument. So we put it as a synergy, so then you can always discuss how should that be shared. But the improvement is there, that's for sure. And not to be forgotten in this case, because on the engine side, there was, of course, a lot of changes made. Also, I made something talked about the intermediate side, but also on the main engine side, I think the firing pressure was increased. The turbocharger, number of turbocharger was also decreased. So that all in all gave also a significant improvement. But somehow it luckily happened to be exactly the same figure as we predicted at the beginning. So, yeah, so I mean, by those cases I have shown here, I think at least I'm happy when I talk to the management that I gave this advice, we should buy this invention, invest into it. And I think I'm also proud to be a part of this invention, even though I'm a late comer, if I may put it that way. So we at MAN, we look at this as our future business. We have, as already said, for when it comes to fixed bit propellers, it's definitely the way that we can succeed. And hopefully that will lead to a lot more orders. I would like to round off here at the very end to thank also you, Mr. Kaplan, for the good cooperation we have over the years, and also with Paul. We have a constant cooperation. I can't say thank you, but I can say we continue the good cooperation with you. We have a number of PhD students. We have also a number of students that we hire. The only wish I have here is that whenever we have new students, that is that somebody would like to move to Frederikshavn instead of staying here. Thank you very much.